It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Bob Brill. Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing real well.
Thank you for coming back on the show. We looked it up. You were on last time. You were on in April of 2024, so it's been almost a year.
About a year.
Yeah. And you've got a new book out called 5 Seconds to Die. Is this part of any of your series? I don't know how many books you got going at this point.
Well, I've written 16. The Lancer Hero of the West series is the only one that so far is a more than one book. Tattoo Murder has the potential to be a series. I've kind of written it as a series, and I've got the second book in my head. This one is a departure. It's modern. Actually, it's 4 years in the future, or 3 years in the future, and but it's sort of set like it's today. It's sort of a film noir deal, and it is. It could be a series. I'm contemplating. It all depends on how well the first book does. The Tattoo Murder took me 10 years to write, and but the second book in the series won't take me anywhere near that long. But it's a more complicated plots, and it's like 300 pages, where most of my books are 250 at the most. And, with actually probably a little less than 200 pages as content. And the same thing with 5 Seconds to Die. But Tattoo Murder, which was 2 books before this one, set in Ventura, modern-day police officer, much more in-depth, much more complicated, and it takes a lot more to write. I'll probably write, at least one more Western novel before I tackle a second book in the other series. So this one's the first of what may be more, but it may just be one.
So is any of this derived from your career in broadcasting? I mean, were these anything that you saw or witnessed, or is it pure imagination?
No, actually, this one is, it has a lot of familiar people to me in it. There's a lot of people in the book, a lot of the characters in the book, and it's fiction, but their names are real. They're real people. And I imagine them when in my writing, and as the people that they are, friends and colleagues in some cases around the globe. And the story is basically, I guess you could sort of say it's sort of tied to my radio career, in that the main character is a former reporter, journalist, writer who has given all that up, just left the field and become a private investigator. I have done all of the things that he has done in his past, but I've not become the private investigator that he has become. And like I said, a lot of the characters have names of real people whom I know and whom I reached out to say, hey, you mind if I use your name? And most people, when you do that, will say, yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you very much. And I've done that in previous books too. Not a lot, just a few, and mainly to faithful readers who are friends of mine. And it's kind of cool. And I don't know if other authors do that, but going forward, I'm going to do that a lot more. So.
Let me ask you something about your radio career, because everybody and their mother today is doing a podcast, But,
right.
But back when you started, there was no such thing as podcasting, and it was terrestrial radio, and that was it.
Right.
How did one train to do that? I mean, were there actually broadcasting schools that people would go to? Or?
Yes.
Yeah?
Sure. Most of them were, there were two that I know of, and there were probably more. You could do it in college. Some colleges had divisions where they would have an on-campus radio station, and you would take classes. Usually, if you went to college, it was mixed with journalism 101, so to speak, and you combine newspaper writing with radio. Cal State Northridge here, which is now Cal State University, Northridge at the time was San Fernando Valley State College when I was going there, and I only had one class, so I didn't graduate college. I don't really consider I went to college except for that one class. But they had a broadcast division, and they also had a journalism division, and that was the reason I wanted to go there right out of high school, is that I could learn radio. But instead, what I did is I took a class just to be enrolled, and it was a Monday night class with Peter Stern of ABC Network TV. And then at the same time, I went to one of the broadcast schools, and there were two at the time. There was Columbia School of Broadcasting, and the one I went to, which was Career Academy School of Broadcasting. And they usually were 4-month courses. You paid about $1,000. I remember that's what it was for me for the 4 months. And it was, I got a student loan for $1,000. And basically they would have a studio in a city, and Career Academy, I think, had 12 cities, and they would have it in an office building where they would have a small broadcast studio set up. It didn't go on the air. It was just in-house. And you had a teacher. You went 5 days a week for 4 hours, and you learned about radio, and you actually did some. Technically, it was not on air, but you did a radio shift in studio, so you got to do that. And basically, they kind of taught everybody to be a disc jockey, and which is how you broke in back then. Whether you wanted to do news or sports or whatever, you usually started as a disc jockey, and then when you got your first job, you kind of were able, you got in a small market, and you were able to branch out and do a lot of different things. And what you learned in broadcast school, at least what I learned in broadcast school, was the same thing I was going to learn about my first 40 hours on the air. And that was basically that. So, they didn't teach you a lot, but they gave you a foundation, and it was cheap enough to do. And you kind of came out of that school figuring, do I really want to do this or not? And there were a couple of guys I think 3 guys in our broadcast class, which started out with like 20, and I think it ended up with like 12 by the time we were finished. And a lot of guys were on the GI Bill too, did it. I think there was 3 guys that actually got jobs right out of school, and some of them got like sales/weekend announcer jobs, or something like that. And a couple of guys got jobs at automated stations, which kind of, for me, would have defeated the purpose. I refused to work at an automated station. But I got my first job about 6 months after I graduated, and mine was kind of a unique situation.
When you were at the school, would they record your, radio session, and then that's what you would use as your sort of portfolio, if you will?
Yeah, it was part of it. We would do just testing and that kind of stuff, and then they taught us how to do basically a 2 to 3 minute audition tape, and then we would cut an audition tape in the studio, and then with the instructor's help, we would make that into an audition tape that we could present to radio stations and general managers, and we had the ability to make copies there. And which was pretty easy, at the time. I mean, at that time we were using reel-to-reel tape, and we were, you had low 3-inch reels, or I think it's 3-inch reels, and you would just make copies, and there was no master. You had a master, and then you just physically made copies from one machine to another. We didn't have a way to mass produce it. Of course, there was no internet, there was no digital at that time. And so, which, now today you make copies and bing, bam, boom. Back then, if you had a 3-minute tape, it took you 3 minutes plus taking the reel off and putting a new reel on, and setting everything up and everything. So it was much more time intensive back then. That was we're talking for me, I'll date myself here. That was 71 actually. I graduated high school in 71, and I started in the fall. So I started there in September. We graduated in January. I got my first job in March of that's in 1972. So it goes back. That's 53 years.
Were there more radio stations back in those days than there are now?
Oh
yeah.
Well, as far as numbers, exact numbers go, I'm assuming there was. I can't say exactly, but a lot of stations did go dark. Small towns, and when consolidation came, it really became weird, because you had one company would own 1,000 radio stations, another company would own 500. At one time we had the three C's: CBS, Columbia, and Citadel, all owned around 1,000 stations each. And at one time there was only about 5,000, 6,000 radio stations in the country, and those three owned most of them. And that came about back in the latter part of the last century, when that happened, when consolidation came. And so you'd hear Rush Limbaugh on maybe 800 stations owned by one of those networks, one of those companies. And at the same time, it really kind of screwed up what radio was all about. But it was economics more than anything else.
Let's pivot back to your book, because we've got just a couple of minutes. Can you give us kind of an overview of the main character and what the reader can expect if they pick up your new one?
Sure. 5 Seconds to Die is basically starts out like a film noir. It's kind of funny, it's got a lot of humor in it, and basically it's about a private eye, who's new in the business, named Casey Order, and he runs into a former B movie queen named Ginger Queen, and she kind of seeks him out in a way. She is the former girlfriend of an Armenian mob boss here in Los Angeles area, who's known as being notorious. And she basically, the plot is, she overheard a criminal plot where a number of criminal gangs around the world, from all walks of life, and when I say all walks of life, I mean everywhere around the world, there are people who hate each other. They all came together in a loosely knit coalition of criminal gangs to form one coalition, and they're targeting the 2028 Olympics here in Los Angeles, and the idea is they're going to hack the Olympics, every single thing, every dollar that's spent, to the tune of $82 billion. And they've hired the world's best hacker, who's come up with a plot and a device, and they're going to do that. And when you figure, you may sound $82 billion a lot of money, but that kind of figures in the fact that you have to think who goes to an event like the Olympic Games: kings, queens, presidents, defense ministers, people like that, who are all going to they're planning to hack everybody, their personal information, and what goes along with that, maybe some nuclear codes, things like that, things that they can sell on the open market. And so that's the plot, and they have to foil that, and it becomes an international thriller and chase, and that's the basic plot.
Okay, well, it sounds very interesting. Has the book been released?
I'm sorry. Technically, it releases toward the end of March, but it is available. In other words, on my website, I have copies which I sell, for $15 plus shipping, which is $5, and that's bobbrillbooks.com. You go to Amazon. I believe you can order the digital copy on Amazon. I don't know if you can order the hard copy, and I only sell hard copies on my site. So, and it's published by Oracle Books. But technically the release date is a little later in March. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit. So
okay, are any of your books available on audiobook?
One is, one of the Lancer books is available on audio, and also I have two that are available on audio. One is one of the Lancer books, and the other one is another fiction. I can't. I'm
that's all right.
Blank on my own book here.
That's okay.
Good,
People can go to your website and find it. Yeah.
El Cabo, Homegrown Terrorist, is available on audiobook, and that was done by Claudio Austria, who's did a really good job on the audio on that. And then the one of the Lancer books that I did for audio, I did. So and that's the only two that we've done. And they're fairly cheap. I don't even remember what the cost of them is. When you bring up audiobook, I do so little audiobooks because I guess because I do 4 days a week, I'm on the air for 5 hours. I don't think of it once I'm off the air. I don't think of audio at all.
Okay. Well, Bob, we're going to wind this down. Thanks so much for coming back on the show. Again, the book is called 5 Seconds to Die, and your website is bobbrillbooks.com. So check it out, everybody. Okay. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.